evening. Welcome to the week 11 of Structure Analysis 1 taught by Professor Amit Shah. I am Trisha Chakraborty, one of the course teaching assistants. I am a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Let's start with a recap of the previous 10 weeks. In phase 1, consisting of the first 6 weeks, we looked at analysis of determinate structures. Week 1 covered types of internal forces. There are 4 types: bending moment, shear force, axial force, and torsional moment. Axial force and torsional moment are both directed along the length of a member, and bending moment and shear force are due to forces transverse to the length of the member. Then we looked at common classification of elements, which involve beams, frames, and trusses. Trusses are two force members, so they only undergo axial force. Beams undergo shear force and bending moment, and frame elements undergo all three. So beams and frames are not really distinguished by their structures. It is about the force that they carry. And trusses are pin jointed at all nodes. And then the types of boundary conditions: fixed support, which provides or translation complete translational and rotational restraint; hinge support, which only provides translational restraint in all directions; and roller support, which provides restraint perpendicular to the surface on which it lies on. Then we looked at structural indeterminacy, which is the degree of redundancy in a structure. Yeah, so redundancy is how many support reactions or how many members can fail for the structure to still remain stable. So in the real world, all structures are indeterminate, highly indeterminate, but indeterminate structures are not easy to solve. So they need some additional material or geometric properties to be solved. So phase 1 covered analysis of determinate structures only. And then we looked at bending moment and shear force diagrams, which is one of the most important topics of this course. They are basically the force type or stress type responses of a beam or a frame. In a frame, axial response is also included. So if we know the bending moment and we know the shear force, we know how to get the stress. For example, bending stress is my by I, where y is the distance of the fiber from the uh, centroid, and I is the second moment of inertia. So if we have the bending moment and shear force, we can get the stress responses. Week 2, we looked at idealization of trusses. So truss, tr- trusses are basically, as I said, two force members. They are represented by lines, and we looked at stability of trusses and solving member forces in a truss using method of joints and method of sections. To solve the member forces, they can be tensile or compressive, and but they are always directed along the member, so they are axial force. And this is the force type or the stress type response of a truss. Then from week 3, week 4, and week 5, we look at the strain or displacement type responses of beams, frames, and trusses. The principle of virtual work, the unit load method to determine displacements in a truss. So we look at the nodal displacement. Basically, every node undergoes a x displacement and a y displacement, so one x displacement. Week 4, we moved on to beams. So deflection of beams are like in a truss, we look at the displacement of the nodes, and in beams, we look at the deflection profile. So the transverse displacement y with respect to the x which goes along the length of the beam. There are some methods. The elastic curve equation method, which basically deals with the differential equation of the beam. It is of the form d2y dx square is m of x by ei, where m of x is the moment varying along the length of the beam. The moment area method and conjugate beam methods are short forms, are like shortcut methods, which to get the deflection of, like, deflection includes displacement and rotation. So for to apply the moment area method, which has two theorems, and the conjugate beam method, which has a set of rules, we have to look at, like, we have to identify which 2 points we are going to use to apply these methods. Week 6 is an isolated topic. It's about influence line diagrams or ILD, which shows the response, the force or stress type response. Basically, force or moments when a force moves along the length of a beam, or a force or or unit force or a unit moment. So we saw how to construct that for a particular reaction force or a shear force or a moment. The Muller-Breslav's principle gives it in a quantitative way, and the absolute maximum bending moment and shear force can be found out using influence line diagram. For a point load, a series of point loads or a uniformly distributed loads greater than or lesser than the span. So then phase two is about analysis of indeterminate structures. Indeterminate structures are redundant, so like they have they cannot just be solved by applying the equations of equilibrium. So there was a review of structural indeterminacy. The degree of structural indeterminacy that can be static or kinematic. It is divided into two parts: external and internal. We have seen how to calculate the degree of indeterminacy. Introduction to force and displacement methods. So force methods and this force methods week 7, 8 and 9 was about the force methods, and uh, 9, 10 and 11 will be about like the last three, 10, 11 and 12 will be about the displacement methods. Maxwell-Betty's reciprocal theorem, my method of consistent deformation, which is a force method, and we saw how to apply that to trusses, beams and frames. Maxwell-Betty's reciprocal theorem is again a shortcut. It is based on the principle of virtual work, but it is a shortcut that is useful for applying in MCQs and all. And degree of kinematic indeterminacy, which comes into question when we are using a displacement method. So when we are using a force method, it is the static indeterminacy that matters more. Displacement methods. Week 7, method of consistent deformation applied to beams. Week 8, method of consistent deformation applied to trusses. And week 9, method of consistent deformation applied to frames. So now the method is basically the same. If you the way we applied the methods were same. The the difference is just in the context of the problem. So in trusses, for we use the AE term in the denominator, and it is about axial force. In beams and frames, in beams we use the EI term, and in frames we use both of those. So we just basically what we do is we take, well, okay, we'll discuss that later. Week 9, 10 and 11. Week 10 is slope deflection method. Week 11 today is moment distribution method. Structural indeterminacy. Structures that cannot be analyzed using statics or equations of equilibrium only are called indeterminate structures. They require other material properties to be solved. Like we have seen, those A, E, and EI, they are all material and geometric properties. When we solved bending moment diagram and bending moment, shear force, axial force of determinate structures, those properties did not come into the question. It was the answer would be same whatever the material and geometric properties are. So here, area and moment of inertia are the geometric properties. They depend on the cross sectional dimension of the member, and the material properties is E, basically Young's modulus. The degree of indeterminacy is the number of unknown reactions minus the number of equations of equilibrium. External indeterminacy is total number of independent support reactions minus total number of available equations of static equilibrium. Internal indeterminacy is total number of internal reactions minus available equations of equilibrium. Degree of structural indeterminacy is the summation of the two, so we can approach the problem in any way. We can find out the external indeterminacy and the total degree of structural indeterminacy, and then subtract this to get the internal indeterminacy, or we can find this external indeterminacy, internal indeterminacy, and add to get the total degree of structural indeterminacy. Now some examples. This is a cantilever beam. It has three support reactions, or if it is a beam with only transverse loading, it has two support reactions. One is moment into the plane, one is vertical force in the vertical direction, and there are two degree equations of equilibrium. We have sigma Fy equal to 0 and sigma Mz equal to 0. So this is a determinate structure. This is a propped cantilever. It has one extra reaction in the form of this roller support. So this is 1 degree indeterminate, 3 minus 2, because the number of equations of equilibrium remains 2 here. This is a frame with two fixed supports. So there are 3 plus 3, 6 unknown external reactions, and there are 3 equations of equilibrium. So 6 minus 3, this is 3 degree indeterminate, and this is a frame with two Hinsabut. So 2 reactions here, 2 reactions here, and 3 equations of equilibrium. Sigma F equal to 0, sigma Fx equal to 0, and sigma Mz equal to 0. So 4 minus 1, 4 minus 3, 1 is the degree of structural indeterminacy. So we look at the details of force methods and displacement methods next. In the force methods, also called the compatibility or flexibility methods, the redundant forces are chosen as unknowns, and additional equations are obtained by considering the geometric conditions imposed on the deformations of the structure, the compatibility conditions. Method of consistent deformation, which we have looked at for the in the context of beam frames and trusses. There are some other methods which we don't look into the details, but the concept of the principle remains the same. Like they are applied in different ways: virtual work or unit load method, strain energy method, method of minimum potential energy, flexibility matrix method. And for displacement, equilibrium or stiffness methods, which we are looking at currently, displacements of joints are taken as unknowns, and equilibrium equations are expressed in terms of these displacements and internal loads. These equations are solved to give the actual joint displacements from which redundant forces can be calculated. So here we apply the compatibility conditions, and here we apply the equilibrium conditions. So that is why this is called compatibility method. This is called equilibrium method, and this is called force method because the redundant force is taken as the unknowns, and this is called displacement method because the displacement of joints are taken as unknowns. And flexibility and stiffness are basically inverse of each other. We'll see that stiffness matrix, every structure has a stiffness matrix that can be assembled, and the inverse of that is the flexibility matrix. So these equations are solved to give actual joint displacements from which redundant forces can be calculated. There are 3 methods: slope deflection, moment distribution, and stiffness matrix method. Last class we looked at the slope deflection method. Today we are going to look at the moment distribution method. And the last class, next Tuesday, we look at stiffness matrix method. And there is an extra class, like a recap class, on next Thursday, which looks at a recap of the entire course. This is a table of the differences between the two methods, force methods and displacement methods. Unknowns in the force method, unknowns are taken as internal member forces or reactions, so that is why it is called a force method. In displacement methods, unknowns are taken as joint displacements. In force methods, to find unknown, compatibility conditions are written. So the number of equations required is the degree of static indeterminacy. And in the displacement methods, to find the unknowns, the joint equilibrium conditions are written. So the number of equations required is equal to the degree of kinematic indeterminacy. So it logically follows that if the force methods are suitable when degree of static indeterminacy is lesser than degree of kinematic indeterminacy, and the displacement method is suitable when degree of static indeterminacy is greater than degree of kinematic indeterminacy, because we would of course choose a method which will provide me lesser number of unknown equations to be solved in the context of the problem. So it depends on the problem, and also the force, like the displacement method for the stiffness matrix method, is the most easily computerizable. So that is one merit in favor of that. Even if this condition does not hold, if you have a computer and if you have a very like a large system, you have to computerize it. So stiffness matrix method is the most useful there. We'll review kinematic indeterminacy, since this is a displacement method and kinematic indeterminacy is what we are concerned with. So, degree of kinematic indeterminacy (dk) refers to the total number of independent available degrees of freedom at all joints. The degree of kinematic indeterminacy may be defined as the total number of unrestrained displacement components at all joints. There are these are the types of joints: 2D truss joint, 3D truss joint, 2D rigid joint, and 3D rigid joint. The truss joints are part of trusses, and the rigid joints are generally part of the frames or beams. So truss joint is basically a pinned joint that only if both sides of a member is pinned, it is a two force member. So that is what makes it a truss joint. So the possible degrees of freedom for 2D truss joint, there are two degrees of freedom, delta x and delta y. It can like be saw in week 3 in the unit load method that we are concerned with the displacement, the x displacement, and the y displacement of the truss joints. For 3D truss joint, there are three degrees of freedom available: delta x, delta y, and delta z in three translational directions. In the 2D plane, this translation direction does not exist at all. So delta z does not exist. For 2D rigid joints, three degrees of freedom are available: delta x, delta y, and theta z. Because it is 2D, so this it can rotate if it rotates in its own plane, the direction of rotation is into or outside the plane. And for 3D rigid joint, there are 6 degrees of freedom: three translational and three rotational. So if you imagine a 3D beam or frame element, every joint can undergo delta x, delta y, and delta z, and then it can undergo two types of bending. One is this, and one is this. So one gives theta x, theta y, and one is the torsion, which is along the length of the member, that is theta z. Degree of kinematic indeterminacy for plane truss or 2D truss. In a pin jointed plane truss, each joint is having 2 degrees of freedom, delta x and delta y. Therefore, for j number of joints, there will be 2j degrees of freedom. So 2 into j. For each joint, there are 2. We know Re will be the support reactions. Hence, at support, joint displacement will not be available in the direction of reaction because they are restrained. So, therefore, total number of unrestrained displacement components at all joints, dk, will be as Re. And for space truss or 3D truss, at each joint there are 3 degrees of freedom, like mentioned here. So it's 3j minus Re, because Re number of support there, since there are Re support reactions, Re degrees of freedom will be restrained in total. So 3j minus Re. For rigid jointed plane frame, there are again three. Yes, good evening. There are three degrees of freedom at each joint, two translational and one rotation. So 3j minus Re, and for rigid jointed space frame, at each joint there are 6 degrees of freedom, so 6j minus Re. In above analysis, all members are considered axially extensible, and all above displacements are elastic displacements. There are some special cases. In rigid frame, if some of the members are actually rigid, then axial displacements in such members are not available. So we have to subtract the from the degree of kinematic indeterminacy, we have to subtract the number of axially rigid members because that degree of freedom is not available. So for 2D rigid jointed frame, decay is 3j minus Re minus m double dash, where m double dash is actually number of axially rigid members, and for 3D rigid jointed frame, decay is 6j minus Re minus m double dash. These are some examples. Determine degree of kinematic indeterminacy of the given cantilever if beam is actually flexible, if beam is actually rigid. So for the first case, if beam is actually flexible, number of joints is 2. All supports, all free ends are considered as joint, as we know. So J is 2 and Re is 3 because there are 3 support reactions at the fixed end, 2 translational and 1 rotational. So dk is 2j minus Re, so 6 minus 3 is, that is 3. And this degree of kinematic indeterminacy can be physically perceived. So the free end is free to move in the x direction, free to deflect in the y direction, and also free to rotate about the z axis. So that is, those are my 3 degrees of. Just a minute. So now, if the beam is actually rigid, then I know that there is one member which is actually rigid. So I have to subtract 1 from this decay. So it's 2. And so now here, if the beam is actually rigid, see the B is no longer free to deflect in, like, extend or compress in the x direction because it is rigid. So it won't move in a manner like this. So it can only deflect in the downward direction or rotate in the z plane. Determine degree of kinematic indeterminacy for the given beam. Also find decay when member is actually rigid. So J is 2, there are 2 joints. Re is 4, there is one hinge here, one hinge support here, so 2. Subtractions, two subtractions here. RE is 4, so decay is 3 into 2, 6 minus 4, so it's 2. And that physically it is rotation at A and rotation at B, so theta A and theta B. If we consider AB as actually rigid, then decay will be the same as previous case, because since there are hinge support at A and B, X displacement is not allowed at A or B. So even if it was actually flexible, this would not make any difference. So just don't blindly subtract the m double dash from the decay. You have to consider whether that degree of freedom was relevant or not. Here it was relevant because here this was a free end, so it was actually free to move in the axial direction. Here it's anywhere restrained, so it won't change. Decay remains 2. In there is another special case. In rigid jointed frames, some of the joints may be hybrid. Then additional degrees of freedom will be available, so decay will increase. So for 2D rigid jointed frame, decay is 3J minus RE minus M dash, M double dash plus RR. RR is the is basically sigma M dash minus 1, where M dash is the number of members meeting at the hybrid joint. The hybrid joint is an internal is an internal hinge, for example. And for 3D rigid jointed frame, the formula remains the same, but RR is multiplied by 3. So it will be RR will be sigma 3 into M dash minus 1. This is a cantilever with two props. You can say what is the number of independent degrees of freedom for the two span continuous beam. Sorry. So here there are three joints. J is 3, and there are two members. So from every joint to every joint, you have to consider different members. It is not one single member. There are two members. So J is 3. RE is RE here is there is one roller support, and then there are three equations from the fixed end. So 3 plus 1, 5. So the beams are considered as 2D rigid jointed open frame. J is 3, RE is 5. So decay is 3 into 3 minus 5, 4. Here actually the number of members does not matter, because because they are not actually rigid. If they were, we would have to subtract 2, because it's 2. There are two members, two actually rigid members, but these are actually extensible, so it doesn't matter. This is a frame with an internal hinge, so that RR thing will come into the question. In the 2D plane, we know that RR is sigma m dash minus 1. J is 4, there are A, B, C, D, there are 4 joints. RE, there is 3 here and 2 here, so 5. RR is sigma m dash minus 1, so that's 1. Decay is 3J minus RE plus RR, so RR it increases 1 degree of kinematic indeterminacy, because it allows a rotational freedom there. So 3 into 4 minus 5 plus 1, so that's 8. 1 second.
Freaky thing of a wider and oval. Very good. It's taking it way outside. This wasn't that dirty for these two teams that are hovering in the middle order. Naturally, we start seeing gaps and here in the table at 2-2 and now 3-2. Victor gets one to finish things off. Not enough. Yeah. Sanitized.
Just one second. Hello. For the beam shown in the figure, find the degree of kinematic indeterminacy considering the beam as flexible. There are three joints. Internal hinge is also considered as a separate joint. So there are J is 3, RE is 5 because there are two reactions here, three reactions here. Internal hinge does not provide any external support reaction. So M dash is 0 because M double dash because the beam is flexible, and RR is sigma M dash minus 1. So R2 minus 1 1. Decay is 5. Rigid jointed frame shown in figure, find degree of kinematic indeterminacy assuming the beams are actually inextensible. J is 9, RE is 3 plus 2 plus 2. This is, as we have seen, this is a support reaction that provides horizontal, like it provides vertical resistance and it also provides moment resistance. So it is only free to move in the x direction. M double dash, number of actually rigid members is 4. Decay is 3J minus RE minus M double dash plus RR. So this is 16. For 2D rigid frame, find decay and show all displacement components. J is 10 because there is one extension here, so there is one joint here. RE is 3 plus 2 plus 1, 6. There are no rigid members, so M double dash is 0 and RR here is 0 because there are no internal hinges or hybrid joints. So decay is 24, and here we mark the modes of displacement. So here this hinge support is free to rotate, the roller support is free to rotate and move in the horizontal direction, and all of these are free to displace in all three directions, like displace in the x direction, y direction, and rotate in the z direction. Moment distribution method, this is a topic for today. It is used to analyze statically indeterminate beams and rigid frames. Every joint of the structure to be analyzed is fixed in the moment distribution method to create fixed end moments. Then each fixed joint is released one by one, and the fixed end moments, which are not in equilibrium at the time of release, are transferred to nearby members until equilibrium is attained. Stiffness for a member at a joint is the moment force required to produce unit rotation or displacement at the joint. So moment is corresponding to unit rotation, force is corresponding to unit displacement. Stiffness at a joint depends upon the end conditions and properties of cross sections. Consider a propped cantilever AB as shown in figure. For above propped cantilever, if anticlockwise moment is applied at end B, then rotation at B is given by theta B is ml by 4 EI. M is 4 EI by L theta B, and for a hinge support, this KBA will be 3 EI by L. This is a derivation, but it's not really very important so long as you know how to apply it. The derivation I don't think will be asked. It's part of more advanced courses generally. A steel frame is shown here. If joint of the frame is rigid, then rotational stiffness of the frame at point O is given by. So there are four members. The rotational stiffness is simply added if there are four members meeting at O. So KO is KOA plus KOB plus KOC plus KOD. This is a fixed support, so KOA is 4EI by L. These are hints. This is also a fixed support, so KOC is also 4EI by L, and the length are all same here. And KOB, this is a hinge support, so it is 3EI by L, and a fixed support provides no stiffness, so it is 11EI by L. Then there is a concept called carryover factors. It is defined as the ratio of the moment at the fixed far end to the moment at the rotating near end. This is a fixed end. This is a hinge support. There is an MA here and there is an MB here. Mathematically, carryover factor is carryover moment at further end divided by applied moment at near end. So it's MA by M from this. Okay, let's not go into the derivations of this because it's just an application. Let's directly look at an application. The magnitude of the bending moment at the fixed support of the beam is equal to, here what we do is we put MA here and MB here, there is P here. So this part we are looking at this part. So since there is a force P here, the moment at B will be PA. P into A. P is the force and A is the lever arm. So the moment at A will be MB by 2, half of it is carried over. So MA will be MB by 2, PA by 2. What is the carryover factor from A to B by using moment distribution for analyzing beam as shown here? A is a roller support, B is a fixed support, and note here that the I varies. So E remains constant, but the I varies, and this EI, you have to keep in mind the EI factors. So effect of M, there's an M here and there's an MB here. Effect of M, we draw, if you draw the M by EI diagram, you will see this is a constant moment, and there will be force, like first solve the equilibrium, like from equilibrium we solve the support reactions. It is ML here. So the moment starts at M by 2, the M by EI diagram starts at M by 2 EI and goes down by ML into 2I. So it goes to here, then it again jumps up and goes down to here. And when we consider this effect of MB, we have to consider them separately. So again we solve the support reactions and get a diagram like this. Using the moment area theorem, deflection at A is moment of area of M by EI diagram between A and B about A. So delta A is C. This is basically, we have to take the area of, this is a trapezium, so if we divide it into a triangle and a rectangle, and then this is a triangle. So delta A is moment of area of M by EI diagram between A and B about A. So the central distance you have to take from A. For the rectangular part, the central will be at the center, and for the triangular parts it will be 1/3 from the base. So this is what we get, and simplifying we get this. The carryover factor is MB by M, that is 7 by 15. Now there is a distribution theorem. If a moment which is applied to a structural joint to produce rotation without translation gets distributed to the connecting members at the joint in the proportion of the stiffness or relative stiffness, MOA is to, like, the ratio of MOA, MOB, MOC, MOD, and MOE is in the ratio of the stiffnesses. So basically, if it's a fixed support, we'll get a 4 E1 I1 by L1. Then this is a fixed support again. This is hinge support, so it's 3 into E3 I3 by L3, and so on. The distribution factor for a member at a joint is the ratio of the stiffness or relative stiffness of the member to the total stiffness. So what we do is we will add all these stiffnesses and put it in the denominator. So uh, MOA plus MOB plus MOC plus MOD plus MOE in the denominator, and for the distribution factor for that member, I'm going to put that stiffness. So this is how it works for. Uh, it's as if the moment, what we basically do is as if there's a moment at the joint and it gets distributed in the different members. That is by moment distribution method. Then there are these fixed moments that you have to like memorize. Even for slope deflection method we needed that. So for a fixed beam with a point load at the center, we have PL by 8, PL by 8. For a fixed beam with a constant load at A from one end and B from one end, we get this PAB square by L square, PA square B by L square. So you can find this in any standard textbook, or the slides are uploaded, so you can refer to them. Procedure of analysis. Find fixed end moment for each member considering each end to be fixed. Sign convention for fixed end moment. Clockwise moment is positive, anti-clockwise moment is negative. Step 2. Find distribution factors for all members meeting at a joint. Each joint is considered rigid. Step 3 is find the unbalanced moment at each joint, and we have to distribute the balancing moment at each joint according to their distribution factor. So every member gets some moment, and then we transfer the carryover moment to their further ends as if the further ends are fixed. So we assume all the further ends are fixed ends. So find final end moments at the ends when all joints are balanced. Draw BMD for given loading by stiffness approach as discussed before. Sign convention is positive moment is sagging, negative moment is hogging. So let's look at an example. For the beam shown in the figure, analyze and draw bending moment diagram using moment distribution method. So this is basically a continuous beam. It has a fixed end here, it has a fixed end here, a roller support here, and it has different loading conditions in between. EI is constant. So for each span, I'm going to consider like A to B and B to C. I'm going to consider as fixed. So assume A is already fixed. I am going to assume B is also fixed, and I have a concentrated load 50 at the midpoint. So PL by 8, I have to give the fixed end moment at A and B both will be PL by 8. At AB it will be minus, here it will be positive, so minus 50 and plus 50 here. And then again BC I'm going to consider fixed and it has a UDL. So let's see, for fixed beam with UDL it's WL square by 12 on both ends. So here I'm going to put W is 25, L is 4, so WL square by 12 on both ends. And the distribution factors, what is it? Here it's a fixed end, so it depends on the length, right? It's 4 ei by l, and this is also 4 ei by l. So the 4 is same because this is also fixed and this is also fixed. And if you stand at B and look at A and C, both are fixed ends, but the lengths are different. So the length of AB is 8 and the length of BC is 4. So it's 1/3 and 2/3 the distribution factors. And then the relative stiffness, I add the total stiffness and I distribute. Basically I get the same thing. These are the same methods. Then this is a kind of table you have to draw for moment distribution method. A, the leftmost end and the rightmost end will be at these ends, and B, the joint which has two members on both sides, it will have two columns under it. One will be the on the left you will put the distribution factor of the left member, and on the right you will put the distribution factor of the right member. And I know the fixed end moments 50 and minus 33.33. I put it here also. I put minus 50 and plus 33.33. So this FEM is fixed end moments. I put in the entire row. Then the bending moment I have the net moment here is 50 minus 33.33. So that is 16.67. That I'm going to distribute according to the distribution factor. So 1/3 I'm going to give here, and 2/3 I'm going to give here, and it's like 1/3 of minus 16.67 is this and this. Then we carry the carryover moment. We know that on the fixed end we are going to carry over half of it. So here I carry over half, it remains negative, and here I carry over half, it remains negative. And then the fixed end moment, I just add these. I'll add these and I'll find here that there is no net moment and there is this. So at joint B, the resultant moment is 16.67 kilonewton meter, which is unbalanced. Hence, a balancing moment of minus 16.67 kilonewton meter is applied at joint B in order to make the net moment at joint 0, because this is a roller support and we know that roller support cannot have any net moment reaction. So the net moment I have to make 0. So since this was positive, I distribute a negative moment here according to the carryover factors. According to the distribution factors. By the distribution theorem, balancing moment gets distributed in the proportion of the distributive factors. Since further ends A and B are fixed, so a carryover moment transfer from joint to ends A and C. Carryover moment at A is this and B is this. It's in the ratio that it's just half. And then when we are drawing the bending moment diagram, we know this is 52.78, which we have calculated here, and this is the sign convention. It's minus, so it's anti-clockwise, and here it's 27.775, and here there's a couple of same magnitude in opposite senses, so this is net is 0. So this is how we draw the bending moment diagram. The resultant bending moment diagram will be due to just like in the slope deflection method, there will be one diagram due to the fixed end moments, and then there will be other diagrams due to just forget about the fixed end moments and treat the loads. So for we know for a point load, it's like this. It will be a triangular shape, and for UDL it's a parabola. So I'm going to superimpose these, and you don't have to give the final shape. You can just keep it in a superimposing manner here. This is analyze the continuous beam here, the bending moment. So this one, two, three. There are three spans here. So when so look at this distribution factors. When I'm at B, what I see at A it's a fixed end, and at C it's a hinged end. So at BA will be 4 EI by 4, and this will be 3 EI by 6, right? Because this BC length is 6, and 3 because this is hinged. Okay, so here I get 0.67 and 0.33. And when I look at when I'm standing at C, at B I find a hinge support, and at D I find a free end. So the carryover moment at D will be towards D will be 0. It's not going to take any moment. So this will be 1. The distributing factor here is 1. Here it's 0. Again we draw a similar table. A, then B has 2 columns, C has 2 columns, and D has 1 column. D will straight away 0 because I know at a free end there can be no moment at all. So here we then again we take AB span and we put this WL square by 12 because it's UDL. We take the BC span and we put the PAB square by L square and PA square V by L square, the formula. And MCD here we put 50 into 2 because it's just a free end, so 50 into 2 meter. So I put the moments here. Then I to make the moment at the joint B0, I find out I get some value. I put the negative, take the negative of it and distribute it as so this will be 0.67 and 0.33. So I distribute it in 2/3 1/3 ratio. And at C I always distribute the entire moment to the D end, because the D end, if I put moment is D end, I will have to ultimately balance it out because D cannot have any moment. So see, if there is a free end, the moments always flow towards the other side. Then I still have some unbalanced moment after I have carried it over. So I again this again I take the resultant and I again have to do some distribution, and now I finally have a balanced fixed end moment. There is minus here, zero here, and zero here. And similarly, the bending moment diagram, first join the fixed end moments and then draw it for this part. This is a parabola, this is a straight line, and this is a flat part. So this is basically how the moment distribution method is used. So this is another example, I guess, similar kind of examples. This has a moment. This has a moment at this point, so we also have a formula for this, I guess. Wait. No, if there is a moment here, we just put. I guess we just uh, put this. We divide it by the length. MBC is M naught by 4. I guess it shouldn't be 4. One second. I think it should be like if there is a moment on a member, the moments at the two ends should be divided by the length. One second. Okay, there will be some formula here for a fixed beam with a moment in between in the span. There will be some formula for the fixed moment which I don't have here. Anyway, the approach doesn't change. The approach remains exactly the same. We find out the fixed end moments and then we superimpose the two diagrams. So, are there any questions?
No, ma'am, कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है.
Okay, so I'll wait for a while if anyone has any questions.
Sorry.
Yes, I'll wait for a while. If there's no questions, you can leave.
Okay.